Hey everybody, it's Jay Ball, Blue Jays Outdoors, and welcome back to another nail-biting episode of Blue Jays Maple Syrup Season 2021. So tonight what I'm doing is I'm actually getting all the buckets and barrels out because I need to go through and just make sure everything's organized, but I also want to check the tubing just to make sure there's no mold buildup over the year. I cut all the taps off. I've got to put new taps on, so I might start doing that tonight. Not really sure, but let me show you guys how I organize and I make sure that I know which barrels go where on the property or on the road in the sugar bush. So check this out. All right, so I promise there is a method to the madness. So as you can see, this says Pete 12 taps. I know the set of trees in the roads where this barrel goes. And then like this one here is Pete 10 taps. I think I know where that one goes. 10 taps, 7-10 split, which I forget where that one goes. But you can see that I've got all these barrels labeled, so I know that all these barrels go on my neighbor Pete's property. Then I've got the two buckets that go on my property. So I've got this oak maple and then the yard, which I know all the taps that go there. And then my neighbors Heather and Garrett, you can see I've got 8 taps, and I've got these lids without buckets because I just put 6-gallon buckets with those lids. My neighbor Brett, you can see I've got all his lids and buckets here. You know, I just make double taps for that. Nothing too fancy. My neighbor Chad, so I know what set of trees this one goes on, and then these ones as well. And yeah, then I've got some other, non-tapped or tubes with no taps or taps on them. So like I said, there is a method to the madness, and this takes a lot of time building the tubing. Let me pull one of these out and show you guys what the tubing actually looks like with everything connected, because I know in one of my past videos I showed you guys what the individual taps and the T's and the Y's look like with the end hooks. But let me pull one of these out so you guys actually see what it looks like assembled. Just for visualization, this is the tubing that goes to the oak maple in the yard. And the reason why I call this the oak maple is because the giant oak tree in my front yard is in between, or there's 2 maple trees next to the giant oak tree. So that's how I always know what this tubing and this connection goes to. Now, probably what I'm going to do this year is redo this one. I made this one 2 years ago, and you can see right here that this is the end hook that goes on the one end, and this is where I wrap some cable around the tree. I hook this on, and then this is the other end, and this is where I put the cable through this hook here. But I want to actually remake this so that I have an end hook that wraps on itself like this. So this end hook is actually designed to wrap around the tubing, and I would like to remake this just so that it's a little bit more clean and consistent, and it'll give me good practice to use that tubing tool that I bought. So yeah, that is what the tubing looks like connected together. The taps are cut off of these. I cut all the taps off because I will only keep my taps on for 2 years, which I'll talk about tap life. We can do that in this video. And then I'll show you also too something that I want to do this time of year is inspect all the tubing, and I'll show you why. So check this out. Now I know this has got to look scary, all this tubing in here, but the reason why I like to inspect the tubing is I flush and clean all the tubing out every season, and then what I do is check to see if there's any mold that gets in the lines. And actually, as you can see, I marked this one because there is some mold inside of this tubing. So what I need to do is I need to cut this section out and replace it with just a connection fitting. So what I'll do is I'll try to show you guys this with my new tubing tool. Let me grab it and grab a connector and see if we can't take this piece of mold out. And then we'll check the rest of the tubing, and then I'll just go through, maybe not show you guys all of it, but I just want to inspect all the tubing so there's no mold, because like I said in my last video, cleanliness is next to godliness, and I don't want to have any more bacteria in my system than I want, or that I can, I guess, keep from getting inside the system as much as possible. So let me get the tubing tool set up and show you guys how I'm going to replace this piece of tube. Okay, so we got our new set of tubing tools, or this new set of tubing tools, which I'm really excited about. And we have just here this straight connector. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut that piece of tubing out and then put this connector in just to get that mold out of the way. So let's try this. I know I'm going to end up hitting the camera, so we're going to open this. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the tubing in between the tubing tool like so. And let's see, we'll just clamp down here and here, and then we'll engage the cutter, cut that piece out, And then what we'll do is we'll unhook this real quick, pull this closer together, clamp that down, open this up, and then we will cut it off right there. Actually, we'll go a little bit farther. Right there. All right, so we'll cut this piece off. There we go. So now we have got the moldy piece of tubing out. You can see that piece of mold right there. So now what we need to do is we need to install this straight line connector. So let's see how this works. Again, I'm not an expert in using this tubing tool. Hold on a second. Okay, there, now that I got that back. So let's try this. Cutter's disengaged, right? Yep, okay. So we'll clamp back down right here, and we will put this in between. I'm trying not to bump the camera, so I know this is probably kind of awkward looking, but again, I don't want to bump the camera. So we'll start the tubing there, close this up just so slightly. Again, don't want to hit the camera base. All right, let's see what happens. Awesome, look at that. Pushes it right together. Unclamp this, open it up a little bit so I can get it clamped all the way down. Awesome, that is so nice. Normally I have to do that with hot water in the field, and that's a pain in the butt. So there you go, that's how you use the tubing tool to cut out a piece of tubing and get rid of the mold and put a connection piece in. So wasn't too bad. Sorry, it was a little awkward and clunky there, but again, not trying to hit the camera. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to inspect all this tubing just to make sure there's no mold. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, let's take a few minutes and talk about, I don't know if you want to call it a controversial topic within the maple syrup industry, but one that's definitely talked about, and that's something called tap life. That's right, these plastic taps right here, or plastic spliles, whatever you want to call them, they have what we call a life, okay? So what do I mean by that? Well, as the sap flows through the system, now this is to the best of my understanding, so I'm not a maple syrup scientist, this is just based off the information I've gathered over the years. As the sap flows through these taps, okay, little microbes and little organisms actually get built up inside the hole that's inside the tap. And over time, what that does is that starts to close the diameter of the hole up, and actually they embed themselves in the plastic, so you can't get them out. What does that do over time? That restricts the flow of sap, so you actually get less sap flow the longer and longer you use these taps. Now, it's all based on personal preference, really, in my opinion, especially for small producers. When you're a larger producer and you're producing thousands and thousands of gallons of syrup, it's a pretty big no-brainer. But for me, I change my taps out every 2 years. So last year was the second season on all my taps. Some of them I might have had one season on. I wasn't for sure, so I went through and cleaned and cut all the taps off, so I have all brand new fresh taps for the 2021 maple syrup season. Now, being a small producer, I run on gravity. I don't have a vacuum system pumping sap out of the tree. So for me, every 2 years, I can justify the cost because I think that your reduction or your sap flow rate can substantially drop maybe 15-20% year over year. So if you keep using the same tap, say for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, you're actually possibly getting less sap flow because the size of the hole inside the tap is restricted. And it's really hard to get those microorganisms out. I think they've done some ultrasonic cleaning to get them out of there, but really, in the grand scheme of things, if you're a big producer, they just replace the taps. Now, there are different types of taps where they don't have, they can replace the tip. They can keep the head, but they replace the tip because that's where most of the bacteria builds up, again, from my understanding. So there is such a thing called tap life. So why do I want to explain this to you? If you are using the same plastic taps year over year over year, you're actually going to see a reduction over time in the amount of syrup you're producing because it's going to slow down the volume of sap. So for me, in my operation, I've just made the decision from a business standpoint that, hey, every 2 years, I'm going to go through, cut all my taps away and recycle them and start for fresh. So I know 2021 season, I'll have all fresh taps. So there you go. There's that controversial, possibly topic in the maple syrup industry which is called Tap Life. And now you know. All right, so I'm trying to think out loud. You know, I just want you guys to understand why I'm giving you this information. I feel, again, this is just my personal opinion, I haven't been in the maple syrup industry that long. I've only been a member of the Michigan Maple Syrup Association, I think, for 3 years now, and really starting to just kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together, because I'm a very small producer. I'm a nobody in the grand scheme of things when it comes to making syrup. There's literally families that make not hundreds, but they make thousands of gallons of syrup a year. I make 25 gallons a year, hopefully maybe 30 this year. There's a lot of information out there, I think, available for larger producers that are running vacuum systems, that are running giant RO systems, you know, that have automated systems. And not that there's not a lot of good information out there for the smaller producers. I'm trying to make it fun and educational for you guys. And again, I want you to learn from my mistakes. So what I'm trying to do with this whole maple syrup video content creation is take what I'm learning from the big producers and trying to scale it down to the small producers to make it understandable, because it is extremely, what's the word? It's overwhelming, right? I mean, you guys see all these buckets and barrels and tubes and taps. I mean, this is a thing for 5 years that I've been getting into and trying to understand. So what I'm trying to do is take that amount of time. If you're getting into maple syrup production, I'm trying to shorten that window of time of knowledge, just learning from my mistakes. So like I said, I think there's a ton of good information out there available. It's just trying to find a good conduit to get it to you guys if you're interested in making syrup. Again, I wasn't handed a maple syrup operation. I literally have 150 to 170 taps on the road that I live on. I started off on a turkey fryer. I then upgraded to a pan that my uncle made me. And then 2 years ago, I bought the bigger evaporator, which you guys have seen. So I'll take some time to explain in a video, you know, kind of the progression of where I started from the boiling standpoint. What I'm also going to do too is I'm going to show you guys, you know, how to set your buckets up, how to drill the holes, and give you some tips and tricks for that stuff as well. So I'm going to go through the rest of the evening. Not going to bore you guys with it, but I'm going to go through, check all the tubing, make sure there's no mold, go through all that part of the process. And yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this little segment of the Blue Jays Maple Syrup Season 2021. Hopefully you learned something about that controversial topic called Tap Life, which I had no idea existed. So again, name's Jay Ball, Blue Jays Outdoors. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. Also follow me on YouTube for daily updates for the Maple Syrup Season 2021. That's blue_J_maple_syrup. And remember, the easiest way to change your attitude is by showing gratitude. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.